How's it going, everybody? So hopefully the sound is working this time, and I don't have to start all over again. But we'll see. Um, so we're gonna try something new. Basically, when you go back and watch the VODs, you just end up seeing me like putzing around. So I'm actually gonna like announce the beginning of this stream. So today's going to be the pipe stream. We're doing a little bit of non-pipe stuff as well. I've got some stuff going on that I need to get done for the virtual art shows that are going on in Chicago. Those are put on by Amder Productions, a company I've been working with for basically my entire career. They kind of made my early career. So they're offering some awesome online virtual art shows. And so I'm making some pieces for those. Lets me get back into the Chicago market without having to drive back to Chicago, which, right now is probably not the best idea. So, I am going to be doing a couple minis that match the mini pendants that I have made previous. I think I made a couple of them on stream. So, in the pictures tomorrow, I will have them next to their little pendant, and those will be up for sale as a set each. So, I got one that's going to be an aqua azul and one that is going to be Seriously, which is like the last bit of Seriously I've got. So that'll be fun. And then beyond that, I'm going to do Wine Stopper, Vinpin Marble Wine Stopper. And then we're going to shoot for a 2-inch Vortex, which, of course, I forgot to prep the Dichro for. So I'll get to prep that in a second. But yeah, that's kind of the plan. And then we'll see what time we have left. If we have enough time left, I'll make a little animal bubbler that I wanted to prototype out and see how they looked and see if it's something else I can offer. So, yeah, guess we get started. So we're going to get started with the Vinpin Marble. That's like the thing I've made the most in my life. So it's always my go-to warm-up piece is if I have to do something with a Vinpin, it's going to be doing a Vinpin. So for those of you who do not know, this is my Vinpin. It's basically just a piece of graphite with... Thank you for checking on the sound. I appreciate that. It's basically a piece of graphite with a bunch of little tungsten picks in it. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be gathering up a bunch of glass and then pressing it on those tungsten picks, and it will leave a whole bunch of dents in the bottom of the glass. You fill each of those dents with a little bit of color, and that will actually perfectly trap a little bubble of air at the end of each one. So then when you drag it down in your implosion process or compression, whatever, we're not going to do that again. You'll get a little bubble of air on top of each little spike. It's like a sea anemone. So it's cool. It's a fun product. I do it both in marble form and, as I will be doing here, in wine stopper form. So first thing we're going to do is just gather up a bunch of glass. Beginning of the process is exactly the same for the marble and the wine stopper. This is that lovely long process of just standing here and waiting for your marble to get a little bit larger. The wine stopper version of the Vinpin marble is a little bit smaller, and I don't have to round it out quite as much because the bottom is flat and gets attached to a wine stopper that is of decent quality. Well, they're of good quality, not decent quality. So with the Vinpin, your whole marble is basically going to be the size of your initial gather. So you do want to make sure that your initial gather is large enough to be what you're trying to achieve. If you rush this process and try to smush it before it's ready, then you'll end up with a small marble. All right, it's pretty good. Grab our smusher. We're going to smush it down on the graphite and then disc it out. Get ourselves a nice disc. Heat the bottom of the disc and then do the exact same thing, this time on your VIN pin. Go around and smush it on the VIN pin to make sure you get those divots nice and deep. And you can kind of see there how you get all the little divots. There we go. All right, so I think we're gonna start with the sea slime. Now we have to we have to fill each of these little divots with glass. The trick when you smush everything down on the VIN pin is you want to try really hard to get the center dot of the pin in the center of your piece. And identifying that center can sometimes be difficult when you go to actually fill the dots. So we're just going to fill a couple rows. Yeah, see, I didn't start in the center, but as soon as you get to the second row, you realize when you haven't started in the center. So we're doing 3 rows of sea slime and 1 row of Terratanium. It's like a really weird color name that I can never remember. Pretty blue. It's a pretty blue. By the time you get to the last ring, it can actually take quite a while to fill an entire ring of dots because, you know, they get larger as you go out. So when I used to do 2- and 3-inch versions of this product, it would take forever. Which is actually pretty much why I stopped doing them. All right. Ow. So now first we're going to melt those dots in. And then we're going to start holding it at an angle and letting it draw down. All right, so now they've melted in. We're going to hold it at a slight downward angle. And then you can kind of see we're aiming, well, I don't know if you can see, but we're aiming our flame at the top inner curve. So if you have the disc that's like that, right up in there is what we're trying to hit. And that kind of helps create this little cup, and that's going to help it drag it down. And unlike the flower, which I don't know how many of you joined me yesterday, but unlike the flower where you keep pressing on the graphite to get it to kind of curl out, you don't want to do that with the VIN pin anemone, whatever, marble. So you want to focus your heat kind of on the inside, and then once it drags down, you want to push the bubble kind of out of the piece from one end to the other. And that helps you get down to a single point without actually having to reach in there and pull it out as much. So it's a little bit more time in the flame, just condensing everything, because you don't have the luxury of pushing that cup closed over and over, and that kind of helps hasten the process a little bit. It is. It can be. I mean, honestly, more than anything, it's just a little bit of flame control and knowing where you're supposed to be hitting your marble at any given time, and knowing that you do just need to let the heat sit there and soak on it a lot. Okay, so yeah, I guess it is difficult. I've just done it a lot. But it's a lot of paying attention to where your flame is hitting, what's getting hot at what time, what gravity's doing, and also what colors you use. What colors you use can make this better or worse. So the colors I chose are not super dense. They're pretty light, flowy colors, so they'll be a little bit easier to do this. If, for example, other colors like Portland gray, for example, yeah, that one, not so light and fluffy. It's dense. So the process of pulling this down takes a lot longer, and it takes a lot more patience in the just sit here and let the flame hit where it needs to hit category. So by heating up the center of this cup a lot, I can now hit the front edge, and the bubble that's formed in there will be compelled to kind of push itself out as everything condenses around it. And that's kind of the basis of how you get that out, or how I get that out. Yes, the gray cabinet pulls are absolutely harder. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, I have to be able, you can do this with any color. It's more of a, it's not necessarily a harder thing. It's just a matter of being a little bit more patient. And you know, patience is a family tradition in my family, so it's not too super difficult to do. People are going to go back and watch this and think I'm being really sincere, not actually knowing my family. So it's starting to get to a point where I can reach in and pluck it out. And it's not that you don't want to do that. It's that you don't want to do it too soon. If you do it too soon, then you'll end up pulling all your color out, and you'll actually have a sea anemone that has a divot in it where you sucked out the color. However, if you wait for your color to really, really sink in at the tips and that bubble to kind of push its way down pretty far, you're safe to go in and actually pluck out the rest of the bubble. You don't have to. You literally can keep doing this until the bubble disappears. I'm not going to, because it takes longer. Time is money. So you get it really, really nice and hot in the very inner part of the cup. Take your 4 mil, go in all the way to the top, and then pull it down. And then right when it gets to the base, stop. Because you don't actually want to pull a ton out. You really just want to get this to no longer have a divot in it. But any more than that is just pulling unnecessarily pulling color out of your piece. Now another trick with the wine stopper instead of the marble. On a marble, I have to spend the time to make sure all the color that's on the outside of the piece is completely gone. Otherwise, you will feel it when you hold the piece. However, with a wine stopper, that part of the piece is actually going to be flat and covered with, well, glass, but it's going to be covered. So you don't have to spend quite as much care on the bottom there to make sure that all the colors on the interior of the glass. So I can just heat this up and go ahead and form it, shape it. So I'm focusing my heat a little bit towards the bottom, towards that spot that's funky, and that will make it sure it moves really nice and smoothly when I shape it next time, and should get it down to pretty much a marble shape. All right, so one more, and it'll be good. Okay, now we've pretty much got it to a marble shape. So unlike when you make this a marble, this time I'm going to add a thick handle to the bottom, and I'm going to add it as a hot seal, so it's completely sealed to the piece. Take the time to really make sure that's sealed. And then we're going to go up here and get rid of our previous handle. Pull off the bleb. And now we're going to run this through the mold one more time. Okay. So that's it for the shaping of the actual marble. I don't have to do a whole lot of the changing of the axis and doing all this other stuff that I normally do, because you're not ever going to roll this. So super minor imperfections are not ever going to be seen. So now let this cool for a second. Going to do a real soft cold seal on the top, and then melt off a chunk of the handle. You actually want to have some handle left over. Maybe like a half inch, 3/4 of an inch, something like that. Like that. And then you just heat this up and smush it. just like that. Let that cool for a second. Grab around the sides, tap, tap, and then heat up the scar that's left over on the top. And you got your wine stopper top. All right. Now we are going to do an Aqua Azul Mini. And that is to match this little pendant. All right, so I had my Aqua Azul tube warming in the kiln. It's a pretty thick tube, so I don't actually need an absolutely massive section of this to make a good sized mini. So I'm going to heat this up, marver it down to a good size, and then attach my blow tube. All right. Pretty good. Attach this to the center. Make sure it's adheres well and is also nice and straight. That's the axis for almost your entire piece. So make sure that it is as straight as you can get it. And now we're going to section off the size piece that we want to work with. There's a slight imperfection on the tube, kind of right near where I'm separating it. So I want to take a little extra care and separate it with a real small flame, at least in the very beginning, to make sure I don't shatter the tube. Which happens and sucks. All right, now that it's nice and hot, I should be able to use a larger flame and pull that down. And pulling it where I am means that the next project will actually pull off the imperfection that's in the tube, so that won't show up on any of my pieces. All right. So that is what we're working with. We're going to go ahead and add a handle to the bottom. going to move up near the top, but not all the way at the actual seam. On the off chance that took too long and now there's some kind of texture problem or whatever that will make this crack, we want to make sure that if it does crack at all, the left hand can support the weight of the piece, and also try just to get it to not do that, just by focusing your heat a little lower on the piece. So now we're going to be making the neck. Want to heat this all up evenly. There's going to be a thicker spot kind of right near the end where I marvered down the end of the tube. So I want to make sure that gets hit with heat, and then after I pull, I'll probably hit that spot specifically because you'll see it's going to be a little thicker than you generally want. Now that it's so hot out here, I may have to switch glasses because these keep sliding down my face. All right, that's pretty good. Gonna go ahead and pull our neck. We don't want it to be too crazy skinny. We also need to recognize that big thick spot on the right is where we marvered down. So we want to hit that with just that with the flame. And you can pull a good amount of neck material right out of that. Probably more than we needed. I just want to even it out. Make sure your neck is nice and smooth and looks good. Give it just a second. I want to put the mouthpiece in first. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Nothing like forgetting how to make products you've made 70,000 times. So I want to do that first. So I want to let it all cool down. Otherwise, when I try to push it, sometimes spots that were too hot before I started will divot, and it can make your mouthpiece go a little wonky. Heat up a very specific spot and then push to get a Maria. Real nice one. And that is your mouthpiece. And we're going to hit this spot right next to the mouthpiece and condense it on the angle marver. We'll do that a couple times. And that's to make the mouth hole not so huge. And then now we're just going to let it kind of pull slightly, and that's going to center the piece. Recenter the piece on the handle, on the right handle. Now we're going to go down and make our second Maria. Right at the base of where our neck pole ends. Push that in, that defines your neck. Make sure you're nice and centered. Just like we brought our flame to the top of the piece to make the neck, now that I want to take that off, I don't want to go straight to where the handle was attached because that's a point of stress that may crack. So I want to make sure I heat above that first and let the heat travel down to it to kind of preheat it before I go down there and hit that with the flame. Pull off that nice big clump of clear that's going to be at the bottom there. Now we're going to heat the whole thing. I love how I decided to start the stream at 4 o'clock, which in the summer out here is the absolute hottest time of the day. If I started at 5 o'clock, I'd be fine. Nope, 4 o'clock. That was my decision. All right, so the goal here is just to get this all heated to the same, relative temperature. And then we're going to kind of angle it down and blow into it at the same time. And that's going to kind of get the first step of forming a beaker done on our piece. Hey, what's up, Andrew? How you doing, man? Thanks for joining me. You got to make sure this kind of knuckle joint, right where it starts to slope, gets nice and hot too, because otherwise you won't get a smooth downward pull on everything. All right, it's pretty good. Smack my mic real quick. Well, thanks for joining us. You got any questions, toss them in the chat. I will read them as much as I can and answer to the best of my ability. All right, so now that you got that first section, that downward swoop, now I want to face it up and create the bottom of my little beaker. Like that. And then we're going to heat the bottom of that, set it on the graphite, blow, and push at the same time. And that's going to really define a nice flat bottom for your piece to sit on. Just like that. Now we're going to form a cup. All you're doing here is heating and then just letting it kind of, gravity will pull it in. And then you're going to set it on the marver and straighten it. Just like that. Pop our hole where our down stem is going to go. Open that up just a little bit. That was a little bit much. That's okay. And you've got your chamber for your mini. Set that in the kiln. Okay, so now we are going to work on the female joint that is going to accompany that piece. I don't normally do my female joints live because I feel like I'm cursed with female joints. Like every time I've tried to do one live or in front of a human, they don't go well. And now that I've started to heat this up, I'm already getting hit in the face with glass popping off the end of my rod. So not promising start. Not a promising start. That's okay. I just didn't have time to make these ahead of time. So we're doing female joints on live. So I'm gonna get this whole section nice and hot. This isn't actually the size. I'm not gonna use this entire section to make one female joint, but I think I'm gonna try to make two out of it. Not now. I'm just gonna make one, but I also have enough of the other tube that I was using for the main chamber left over to make two of these, and I like the way these minis come out, so the more the merrier. Get that nice and hot, add a handle, pull it down carefully. You don't actually want this to get too thin. Making female joints requires thicker glass than you think. Whatever it is you think, it's more. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. Doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to be doing a little bit of, actually, doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be a little bit better than this. I don't mind there being a little thick spot on my left here, just a little bit, because I'm actually going to blow that out a tad to form the cup of the 14 millimeter female joint. But I would like the rest of the tube to be nice and even, so that when I go to make the second one, I'm not working around random wonky spots. All right, so now we're going to get this top part nice and hot. We're going to roll it on the Marver and blow into it at the same time. And I'm kind of going to be basically eyeballing what I think is going to be roughly the right size for a 14 millimeter joint. That's probably close enough. So now we'll pluck open the hole and then move over to our joint forming tool. Guess we're not using that one. This is another one of those situations where I could just blow into it and pop it that way. I like having the hole nice and centered. It makes for a little bit more streamlined looking female joint. So you just pluck it thin, keep doing that till it pops. Take my brand new reamer that's back down. Look at that tiny little tip. Oh my God. I broke the other one, my last one of these, live like 2 shows ago. And now that I have the new one, I'm super stoked. I break those like every couple months. So like the reamers are pretty useful for a lot of stuff, even broken. But like the one thing that I absolutely need, we're gonna shrink that down just a little bit. The one thing that I absolutely have to have a 2 millimeter reamer for so much, and I keep breaking them. So I have like 9, like 4, 6, 8 millimeter reamers that aren't, that all have the 2 millimeters that have the tips broken off. So I have those laying all over the place, but I only ever have one 2 millimeter reamer at a time. Last one I was pissed. That one lasted me like, I don't know, almost a year. All right, so now we got that. What I did is I covered, this is my 14 millimeter thing, joint forming tool. And I cover it with wax, beeswax, and that makes it a little bit slick. So I can push it in and rotate it to push the glass and form the glass without it sticking to the inside of my glass. And it is exactly 14 millimeters. The ground joints that you use, it is exactly the same size. So it should always form a really, really good joint for you. Now I'm going to heat this rim. Use that thing just to kind of give it a defined rim. Take the 14 millimeter joint that's covered in wax, let it cool for a second, then check to make sure. Yep. Goes in, doesn't wiggle. You don't want it to do anything, move around. Take your joint holder, which I wish I hadn't had setting right where it is because it's super hot. I don't like this. So when you put it in, that one, it kind of moved a little bit, which means that when you put your banger in there, it's going to move a little bit. And since that's basically like the only functional part of this piece that absolutely has to be perfect or it's going to be super noticeable, you got to make sure it's perfect. So I don't really like how that felt. So I'm going to pull this down. Reheat, reblow, reshape, and then use the joint forming tool again. When I'm doing clear pieces, this is usually done with just a 17 millimeter piece of tube. That's like exactly the right thickness and exactly the right size. But when I'm making full color pieces, you have to form the joint out of the color that you have. So sometimes it takes a couple tries. Which is also one of the reasons they're more expensive. All right, let's try this all over again. This is also why I don't do them live. I always screw something up. Pop the hole again, reopen that lip again. This one feels a little bit better already. The other one was a little thin at the mouthpiece, the lip of the piece, which isn't necessarily a deal breaker. But I prefer if it's a little bit thicker. So just because I want to make sure this form fits, I'm actually going to condense it just a tiny bit. And now when I use my tool, it should open it exactly the right amount for the whole piece. Perfect. Just like that. That's exactly what I want. Now when you're doing that, you have to rotate your left hand because otherwise your piece will slump, but you have to rotate your right hand faster so that you don't end up just like if you rotate them both at the same speed, this thing is like a octagon? It's an octagon. You'll end up with like an octagon shape on the inside if you rotate them at the same speed because all you're doing is pushing. So you have to make sure you rotate your reamer faster than your female joint so that it has a nice smooth circular interior. So that didn't take me forever to figure out or anything. You also have to do that really quick. Otherwise, a lot of times they'll get stuck. See, now that didn't wiggle at all. So that's what I'm looking for. So now we're going to heat right below where your joint, your ground joint will sit and push our first Maria. And you can do this one kind of slow. It doesn't have to be like you wait till it's super hot and then push. I do it a little bit slower as long as you push evenly and rotate evenly while you're doing it. Now we're going to not separate, but condense, pull. We're going to pull. We're going to heat this up. We're going to pull it, and it's going to get smaller. whatever word you want to use to describe that process. Okay, so you can see we pull it a little bit, and then it gets smaller. And then we're going to go down here and actually take it off the piece, and that bottom chunk is going to be what we're going to use to connect to our mini that we have in the kiln. Just like that. Get it nice and hot. We're going to raise it at an upward angle and blow. That's going to kind of create more of a disc unless it's just a straight ball. You want the outer rim of your bottom little bubble disc thing to kind of be as long, as wide, if not wider than the Maria that you pushed in at the base of your joint. It doesn't have to be, but if it is, it will make it a little bit easier to attach it to the mini in a later process, and will hopefully like spare you tungsten pick dragging glass together to make sure that it seals properly. Blow it out a second time. That's pretty good there. Give it a second to cool, and then we'll pop it open. All right, so here it doesn't really matter how centered the hole is, so I can just blow it open. And then take your reamer and make sure you open it up a little bit more. Like that. All right, set that in the kiln. So now comes assembly time. So first thing we're going to do is make a down tube. I have like two different thickness, wall thicknesses of the same tube that I use. There we are. So like finding the right one, if I have both on the bench, is a pain in the ass. Same outer diameter, different inner diameter. All right, close your tube. Heat up around it, like gravity bend it into almost a 90 degree. Pop a hole on either side. All right. Grab our mini. We're going to set the down tube inside. We're going to heat the upper lip. The down tube kind of floats in the hole that you created earlier until the upper lip is hot, and then you want to press it against it so that it stabilizes the down tube. And then you can kind of use the clear glass that you're heating to cover and fill the rest of that hole that you popped in your piece earlier. Then we want to heat this all up, get this all nice and melted in, and then we're going to blow out so that the air comes through our down tube. And there's a thin spot on the other side near the down tube that's not through the down tube. I have to be very careful not to pop that and to pop through the down tube instead. And so what I'm actually going to do is take a second, heat that spot that's super trying to pop that's next to the down tube, and then let it cool for a second. And then when I focus my heat on the inner wall of the down tube, I can pop that out, and that way when you put everything together, it'll travel down, your airflow will travel down the down tube unimpeded. It happens sometimes, it's a pain in the butt. So I create a real large bubble like that and then pop it. Part of what I'm doing when I do that is opening the outer diameter of my down tube little bubble thing, so that when you attach everything, it will look good and it'll have a good airflow. So now I want to get rid of all the clear. It's going to be slightly problematic because of that same issue we had before of that thin spot. So I just have to make sure that when I put my 14 millimeter female joint on, I cover that thin spot so that the excess glass of my female joint on top of it will make it a thick spot. Not a thick spot, but a spot that's, you know, sturdy. Well built. In good shape. Make sure you center your down tube. Set this aside, grab your female joint. I'm going to heat the female joint, not the piece, because I don't want that down tube to move at all. So I really just want this to adhere with one piece. And then I'll go back and heat everything in to make sure that it connects itself properly. Once it's attached, make sure it's nice and straight. And now you're going to go ahead and take a forever to slowly work your heat around the piece. You want to make sure that that spot where you've got basically three joints. You've got the down tube attached to the chamber, and then on the outside of that, you have the female piece attached to the down tube and chamber joint. So this particular spot has more stress in it than any other spot in all of your glass. It is by far, it's completely stressed out. So you need to really take your time and let some heat sink into every little spot all the way around your female joint. That way you work the stress out, everything gets nice and smooth, everything that's weird, you know, weird shapes and curves and stuff smooths itself out. And that'll reduce the stress and make sure that your female joint section won't cause your piece to crack. However, you can't just heat all the way around it because then it starts moving and everything causes all kinds of problems. So you want to heat it at a section of it, let it cool, heat the next section, let it cool, heat another section, and that way your cool sections will keep the stability of the piece. It'll keep it where you want it to be, while your hot sections are burning the stress out of your piece. This is the one step in the entire process there's absolutely no way that you can rush. You literally just have to hunker down, take your time, and work the stress out. If you try to rush it, if you try to do something different or weird or whatever, it will crack on you like every time. It will crack on me every time. You may be magical. I am not. I am terrible, so it will crack on me. All right, we just have one more spot right on the side there that we got to heat up, and then we can set this bad boy in the kiln. So what we're going to do next is go ahead and make the chamber for our Seriously Mini. And then we'll come back to this piece and do the neck bend and all of that. All right, we are pretty good there. And set that in the kiln, then we got our series tube out. This tube is already pretty much the size I want, and I'm not going to get anything else out of it, so I'd rather have a slightly larger mini and use the entire tube properly than have like some tiny little chunk of tube that I don't even know what to do with laying around. So I'm going to use this entire tube. And then we're going to do a coil pot tube for the female joint. So this has been sitting in the kiln for a good long time, so it's up to temperature. I don't have to stress about it cracking at its handle. Having said that, I'm glad it didn't then immediately crack at its handle. But we're going to go ahead and heat this all up, same as we did on the last piece. Now, since you can see I don't know if you can see, you can kind of see the thickness. The handle towards my right hand is incredibly thick, so I actually don't want to heat up too much, like width-wise. I want to pretty much focus my heat on that super thick spot. That way, when I pull my neck, it'll all pull out of the thickest spot of the glass, and it'll leave plenty of the rest of the tube available for me to make my chamber, which really should be taking up a larger section of glass. All right, that's good. Go ahead and pull that down. Don't want to rush it. Don't want a neck that's too thin. The top part here is a little thicker than the rest, so we're going to heat that whole top part up just a little and pull just a little. All right. Awesome sauce. Let that cool, let it stabilize, and then we're going to go ahead and push into Maria for the mouthpiece. Nice mouthpiece, Maria. Make sure you heat above and below. Get rid of any kind of weird cold marks you've got. And then immediately come over here and we're going to condense the mouthpiece, the mouth hole. And heat it up one more time. Not as hot. I tend to hold it at an angle. You can hold it vertical, whatever suits you best for straightening things, but use this time to straighten your piece. Now we're going to go down here and hit this second Maria. My piece is a tad bit off center, so this Maria is going to be a little, I have to work for it. Make sure you heat that spot above and below the Maria, get rid of any cold marks. And then I want to try to make sure that my piece sits pretty straight Maria to neck. The chamber I'm going to be working, so that doesn't need to be quite so centered. It's going to get altered slightly anyways. So yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, take off our handle. and heat up our piece. Now on this one, because it's a little off center, I want to make sure that I get enough heat right at that neck joint so that the downward pull and blow of the piece comes directly from the Maria and not from a little bit below it. That way it will even itself out as you blow into it and as it goes down, as it draws down. So all of these products, I know how they look in the webcam, so I will have pictures of these up on my Facebook at Vulcan Glass Art Studio, on my Instagram at Vulcan Glass Art. I'll get those both up tomorrow. So anytime I do a live stream, I always make sure I get pictures of all the products that were made live that day up on those in those two places, so you can get a better look of exactly what got made. So we're getting there, almost hot enough. Heat is a nice even base. So this drop and blow should go really well. Yeah, I like that. So that's a pretty good shape. Now we're going to heat this bottom up and blow. And then we'll heat it and press it on the graphite, blow into it, and get our final bottom shape all settled. Like that. Now I form our cup. And then press and straighten. And then pop your hole for your down tube. All right, got that all sorted. Put that in the kiln. Okay, I'll be right back. I gotta grab more water. Okay. So now we're going to make our seriously female joint. I don't have any more tube left, but I do have some seriously left. So what I'm going to do is coil pot a section of tubing and use that to make my female joint. All right. So anyone who's worked ceramics probably knows the routine on the coil pot. Basically, what you're going to do is lay down a rim of color around the edge of your tube, and then you just keep going and lay another layer and another layer and another layer. So I'm going to lay this right around the edge of the tube, and then keep following it, and lay one line on top of the last line on top of the last line. I'm going to keep doing this until I've got a reasonable size section of tube. Now, the downside to this is how you're laying it. Kind of with certain colors, it'll show the lines of having like been laid down sideways and looks bad. Seriously, doesn't really so much as long as you heat it up enough to really get rid of everything, get everything homogenized and nice and melted in. So this I think is a pretty fine technique depending on the color. You can also do blowouts, which is gathering a whole bunch of a color and then blowing through it. That tends to yield you a slightly better looking and smoother tube on the whole. But I personally screw those up a lot more, so I'm not going to do one live. So I can maintain my air of awesomeness. All right. So now we'll take this tube, we want to melt it down, and then I'm going to blow it out while rolling it on the angle marver. It is totally okay to do this a few times. You have to remember that it's more important that you get this melted in and looking good than it gets done quick. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm like not even convinced it's enough. But that's all right. If it's not, I have a step later on in the process where I can pretty easily add some more. All right, that's pretty good. Gonna pop a hole. Oh wow, okay, actually that is quite a bit thicker than I thought it was. We're gonna heat that up and blow that a little bit thinner. Unlike a lot of things in glass, you actually don't want your female joints to be too thick, or when you try to attach things and when you try to form everything, it makes the process much more difficult. And your female joints tend to always be a little bit thicker than you think they are anyways, or at least for me. All right. Open this up. It is far too large, so I want to condense it down. That's a little bit better. All right, heat the top part. Make sure your reamer's got wax on it. Good. Heat the lip. Go ahead and ream it again. Get yourself a defined lip. And do that one more time. Good. Check to make sure it is the right size. It is. And then we'll get to work on the rest of it. First, going to push on our Maria. Make sure there's no cold marks. And then we're going to pull down right below our Maria. And then we're actually going to pop it open and add more seriously to the bottom here. This is that spot where I said we didn't quite have enough, but I could pretty easily add more. That is right here. Pop that off, get rid of all the clear. Grab your color and just coil pot on top of your remaining coil pot. Now remember, when you blow this out, you really have to spend time melting it all in. Otherwise, this whole thing on the bottom is going to look terrible and blow out weird and just be gross. So you really got to spend some time actually focusing the heat on there. Blow it out, let it condense. Blow it out, let it condense. When you do a coil pot like that, especially when you're adding a coil pot on top of a coil pot. Got it nice and condensed. Blow it out. Far from an even blowout. So this, but it did go out. So now we're going to condense it again. Do it again. Now it's looking fine. We'll do it one more time and we should be all set. Sweet. In good shape. Pop this on the side. Open it up. Toss it in the kiln. All right. So now we are going to do a thing. Oh yes, down tube. We're going to put the whole thing together. So blown out, one of those colors looks less like seriously than I want it to be, even though I'm like 99% sure it is. So in the pictures tomorrow, you're either going to get a really nice seriously tube or this odd tube that has like one color of chamber and the other color of female piece. So I guess we'll see. It doesn't help that it's like a CFL, changes in daylight, changes in fluorescent, changes in LED kind of color. So it looks like 7 different colors anyways. But here's to hoping it's all the same color, right? All right, grab this. Female join in here. Same way we did before. That was a much better seal. I had a smaller hole on the outside of my piece, so that made the whole seal a lot easier. Last time I blew the hole out a little bit too large on that aqua azul piece. So that's where you ended up with the whole issue. I'm going to condense that down and do that again. That's where you end up with the whole issue of the second bubble trying to pop through. That's better. Get rid of the clear. Center your tube. All right, so we're going to set that in because that is most definitely not the same color. It was all green when I picked it up, but now, like, I don't know if you guys can see that. Those are like 2 totally different colors. So tomorrow we're going to go on the journey of figuring out exactly what color that is. All right, so we'll go ahead and finish our aqua azul piece. Grab it with the grippers. Going to go ahead and melt off right above the mouthpiece. Set that aside. Make sure we pull off that bleb. Flatten out the top. Make sure that hole in the top's a good size. Now we're going to go for the neck bend. Good. Make sure you get rid of the cold marks that are going to be on the underside of the neck. And you got yourself a nice blue mini. Okay. So, I guess since we're not finishing that one, we will do a bubbler. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, cool. So we're going with a little bit of a cartoony look on this one, I think. So we're going to use some lava and some goldenrod frit. And then some 30 mil tube. There it is. Where's my 32 mil? Some 32 mil tube. And actually, before I do this, I'm going to get some dichro in the kiln for our 2-inch marble after this one. All right. So we're going to make this one, I'm going to try to make this one kind of small. I don't feel like having a huge hammer. And this is, I've done little hammer bubblers quite a bit over the years. And I kind of want to try to find one that's nice and streamlined to put in the product catalog. So we're going to try that with this guy. I'm going to do about a 3-inch point. Okay, well, that point's less than awesome. That's okay. Now we will open the piece up. Start with yellow. I'm going to dump a bunch of frit on the inside of the tube. Now I'm going to work my way, well, not work my way, I'm just going to go straight down to the kind of knuckle spot where the point starts to get created. Going to heat that up, and once it gets to the right temperature, the frit rolling around on the inside of the tube will adhere to the inner wall of the tube, and that is the goal of this technique. So I'm only working half the tube. I want all of my color to stick to the bottom half of this tube. And then I can pour the excess back in the tray. Use metal trays, or trays that can handle heat for that reason. Same thing here. Be a little more precise with how much frit you use in that one, because you can't pour it back into the tray. Your second color is going to pick up little flakes of your first color that will fall off just due to heat shock and things like that and abrasion. So when if you try to pour it back in your tray, you are actually going to contaminate your color with whatever your second color with whatever your first color is, and you don't want to do that. Melt this down, condense it, close it, toss a handle on it. All right, so I want this to go. I want to pull this down. Actually, so I wasn't really planning on using this one as the chamber of my piece, but it's a little bit larger. I think the neck piece that I want to pull down later is going to be a little bit smaller than this. So I'm going to use this to make the chamber of my piece. So first thing I'm going to do is melt in all of the color and in this bottom, get it super condensed, and then I'm going to blow into it and form what's going to be the kind of bubble at the bottom of your bubbler that holds water. Gather a lot, because this is not, I don't want this thing to be very tall. I want it to be pretty squat. So I want to make sure that this bottom gather is nice and large. That's pretty good. Keep that up, do it, give it one more puff. Yeah, that's good. Nice and squat. So this guy's going to hold water, but it's not going to be a ton. All right, so now we're going to pull out a hole in the bottom. This also gives you a chance to center your piece a little. Where you're plucking this hole, if you rotate while you pluck, it kind of auto centers where this hole is going to be. And since I'm going to be attaching a handle to it, that will help center your piece. Because the point that I used was not a good point. Condense that down a little bit. Make sure it's a solid hold. And then while it's still hot and while I'm still at this angle, I'm actually going to go ahead and heat this top spot. That way this will loosen and everything should hopefully center to that bottom tube. All right, so now I want to focus on the neck, basically because I want to get this, turn that down a little. I want to get that spot that I haven't heated up yet, that's all skinny. I want to get that super melted in, and we're going to pull it down a little bit, separating it ever so slightly. And then we'll gather it back up and blow into it, and that's going to form the bowl of our little bubbler. Again, take your time. This step is also melting in your frit. All right, pretty good. Now we're going to separate this off right here. And now we're going to gather it all back up and blow into it. We're going to do it in an upward angle to kind of give us our bowl for our little bubbler. One more time, focusing really, really hard on the very top. Good. Let that cool for a second, then we'll pop a hole in the top where our down stem will go. You can pop it with a rod and get it nice and centered, but I find that when I'm putting a down stem, it's a little easier if I pop it with air pressure. And since this hole doesn't need to be tiny, it actually has to be big enough to fit the down stem. I don't have to be super careful with my sizing. So I want to size the hole so it is just big enough for the down tube that I'm going to use to slide down. That was a little too small. Spending the extra time to do this will make your life a lot easier. And want to clip off the size of the tube that you want to use. It is always smaller than you think it is. We'll attach a 4mm. I'm just going to set it down in the tube, pin it to the wall, and melt it in. Oops. And then you want to make sure you seal it all the way around real nice. All right, so now the kind of annoying part is that hole's pretty large. So we now have to spend the time to condense it down to get it to be a regular bowl hole size. Once you get it to that size, you want to push your starter bowl and then I straighten my down stem, and then reheat and push a little bit more. And then re-straighten your bowl again. Like that. Pop on the hole in the side here. I can't actually see. And then open it up just a little bit. Like that. All right, set that in the kiln. Oh, so my dichro did something weird in the kiln, so I'm going to try to put in a different set, but let it preheat itself for a minute. Basically, all the dichro filament separated from the glass, so it's not going to use. That's not going to be useful. So I'm going to see if preheating is going to solve that issue. Probably will. All right, so now let's do the stem. So I learned in that last, oh my God, that point's horrible. So first I'm going to fix the point, get it a little bit more centered, because, yeah. All right, that's a little bit better. All right, so on the last one, I found out that that amount of glass was a bit excessive for the stem. It was fine for the chamber. So I want to go ahead and take a little bit smaller point this time. So I'm doing, I don't know, 2.5 inch point, something like that. Smaller, much smaller. Much better. Set that aside. Open this up. Don't move my hand up too far because I'm going to burn myself. Pop that open. And open it up a little bit more. All right, so now, let's see. Piece I did was yellow and orange. Attach the orange. The top is yellow. So okay. So I don't really want yellow to attach to yellow. I prefer if yellow attached to orange. So that's a little bit too much. So I want to make sure that now what's going to be the mouthpiece is yellow. So it goes yellow, orange, yellow, orange. All right, close that up. Now we're going to basically draw this entire thing down. The stem of the bubbler is just one continuous piece. So you want to take your time and really melt everything in. Make sure it's nice and thick and it looks good. And just draw it down. Nice and melted in. You don't actually want to draw it down too much. We're not doing a lot to this as far as like adding decoration. Like we're not putting any Marias in. It is just going to be like this. So it's better that it's nice and thick and the right size and not too overdrawn and drawn down. Now our mouthpiece. We're probably going to have to actually blow this one into this one because it's a little bit thin near the mouthpiece. Oh, actually, that's not bad. A little bit. There we go. And then below it to straighten everything out. And then pull ever so slightly just to straighten everything. All right, so now we're going to make our connection point. I want it to be a little bit of a bump. Not quite as much as I have here, so we're going to pull some of this off. And we're going to heat this up. Now, on this one, we're actually going to hold it down and blow, so it kind of elongates the bubble. That'll, I don't know. I think it'll look better in the final product. But first, make sure you do heat it enough to get everything melted in. That spot's probably not going to be melted in like the rest of it was. So spend a little extra time letting it soak in the flame. Yeah, just like that. You don't want a big bubble at the end. It's just a little bit. Purely aesthetics. Does not serve a function. Looks pretty. So now we're going to pop a hole in the center and we're going to attach it to our chamber. This time I actually am going to pluck out the center. I would like this to be, the hole to be like super centered, so I'm not going to blow it out. I might a little, but I'm going to pluck it out thin first so it'll pop in a very specific spot. There we go. Now it's just super thin in that one spot, so when it decides to pop, it's going to pop right there. You want to open this to pretty much the size of the opening on our chamber. Grab our little chamber. Get both connection points super hot. And then connect the two. I'm going to pull just a little. Make sure you hold it so it stays nice and level with everything. And hold it there for a second. Let it cool. Let it take its time. All right, sweet. So now, I'm afraid that might happen. You want to hit this spot and get rid of your handle. Mine actually cracked, but it doesn't look like the crack went anywhere. In fact, it didn't. So that's fine. That's also why when you make your chamber, you're going to spend a little extra time melting that in. I didn't do that, and I should have, but didn't really affect the piece. Everything's still fine. So you want to pull out the clear so you have nothing but color at the bottom there. You don't want like a very obvious hole of clear that's just like, hey, there was a handle here at one point. So make sure you pull that out. All right, so now we want to flatten the bottom. Now this piece, it's a real low sitter. It's going to sit nice and small. So you want to actually heat towards the back of your bubble quite a bit. Oh, wait. Nah, you can do that first. Heat the back of your bubble quite a bit, and then you're going to set it down. And you want to set down your mouthpiece first, and then let your Okay, I know you couldn't see that. You set your mouthpiece first and then press. That way you're guaranteed that when you set this down, your mouthpiece is on line with the base of your actual piece. So now just like we did with the, ooh, that's hot. Now just like we did with the mini, you want to take some time on this joint and go all the way around it slowly, melting in one section of it at a time. Because this joint where your stem piece meets your chamber, it's not quite as insane as the 3-part joint of a female piece, chamber, and downstem, but it is enough that you want to make sure you spend some time getting it nice and melted in. But also take your time because this is heavy, so you really want to make sure that the cold glass somewhere in that joint is holding everything together for you. So don't rush, is basically the gist of it. So once I get this melted in, I told you this was going to be a little cartoony. So this one's actually going to get a turtle on the side. A super cartoony turtle at that. I haven't fully decided if this is going to remain a completely cartoony piece or if I'm going to do a just standard, I like little hammer bubbler style piece later on. But for now, cartoony turtle, because I like turtles. Or I can do an octopus or many others, but this one's getting a turtle because I didn't pull any stringers down ahead of time. All right, so that's pretty attached. I'm gonna let that cool for a second. We're gonna pop our rush hole and make our turtle. Oh, that's better. Use that. All right, pop our rush hole. That's good. That's turtle time. So I'm going to start by making the basis of the shell. I'm just using a forest green. I want to heat up the spot where this turtle is going to go. And I want to gather a reasonably large clump of green. Doing it slightly over to the side so it can also kind of act as a hand grip a little bit. So now I'm going to take some double amber purple, and that is going to make the, every turtle has some kind of pattern on their shell. This is going to be my shell pattern color. So I start with the first dot right in the center, and then circle around that. And then one more time. Melt all that in. Okay. Now I'm going to make his little neck and head. Going to heat up a section. I'm going to pull it ever so slightly just to kind of thin it out just a little bit. That. We'll attach that. And then melt it off, making sure I leave a good amount for the actual head. Now I'm going to put the 4 feet on. Now we're going to form little foot pads. So I kind of just heat one of the feet up and then press into it with the tungsten pick. And it makes a little cute foot pad looking thing. Oh, not quite hot enough. Try that again. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to focus on getting the head. So you can kind of see the turtle starting to take shape. So now I'm going to heat this head section. I want to get that gathered up, and then I'm going to give it a little pinch and pull with the tweezers, and that's going to kind of define its facial structure. It gives it a nose. That's really what it does. Turtles totally have noses. All right, next. I'm going to find some white that I don't hate. Star white tends to boil. I don't really like using it in this particular application because I want to get this done quickly. So I use a Paramore white. Paramore white kind of sucks in a lot of encasing things, but it's absolutely amazing for sculpture stuff. White dot. White dot. Melt those in just a little. That's not black. Bring it close. And then black dot, black dot. And melt those in. And you got cute little turtle outside of the bubbler. Set that in the kiln. Set my dichro in there. Okay, so last project for today is going to be a 2-inch dichro vortex marble. So this one's going to be kind of big, kind of hot. It's going to take a little while, but in theory, it should come out pretty awesome. Okay. Thank you. I actually think that bubbler is going to come out pretty nice. We'll take it off the tube after I am done with the dichro vortex marble thingy. Okay. Start with a rather large chunk of glass. Okay. So you add quite a lot of material to these vortexes, and the larger you make your initial cone, and thus the larger you get your base piece that you're working with, everything you add on top of that is like exponentially larger. So I really want to spend my time making a nice sized cone. And in that spirit, I actually think I'm going to add a chunk of clear to this. And that way I can have a nice large cone for my piece and not burn the hell out of my hand later when I'm trying to put a lens on it. These can get big, and the last thing I want is to not have enough lens on a vortex marble that I've spent like 45 minutes trying to make. As such, I prefer to err on the side of caution. So right now I'm just heating this clear, and I'm kind of pushing it together, and it'll slowly start gathering up. And that way I'm making my cone without using any of the clear glass on my large rod that's my right, because that's going to be my lens. And that means that's all I got. Like, I have that much glass specifically. I can't really add more on that end. So instead, I'm going to add more on this end to make this all work out better. I'm like trying to decide if this is enough or too much or not enough. So I think I'm going to err on the side of that's good. It's good enough. All right. So now we'll gather this up and cone it down. That is a big ass cone, so that should be fine. All right, that's a good cone, short and fat, just how you like them. Like that. Let that cool for a second, then set it aside and add some dichro. All right, so you gotta let it cool before you set it down, otherwise it'll droop and ruin your piece. Wow, this dichro is not interested in working correctly. All right, so we're gonna set this in the kiln and get a different kind of dichro. Okay. I guess while we're waiting for that, we're gonna go ahead and take the. No, we're just gonna wait. We're gonna wait a second. I was gonna say we could take the bubbler off the tube, but I don't think it's been in there quite that long. We'll like take the bubbler off the tube and have it crack because I'm being impatient. All right, that seems to be doing a little bit better. Not super hot yet, but we'll see what we can do. That's pretty good. So we'll get our cone nice and hot and our dichro nice and hot, and then go ahead and adhere the two. It's good. Cut as little off of that as I can, and then fold over the edges. All right, set that aside, grab another piece. And make sure that you double layer the dichro. Oh, wait, no, not that. Don't do that. So I put the dichro actually on the wrong side. So I gotta try to do this again. I don't know how well this is gonna work. You can tell I'm getting tired, making mistakes. All right. Cut that off. So it's not quite as much dichro as I would have liked, because when I put it on, I accidentally put it on dichro side up instead of clear side up, and that would have caused it to completely melt and fry out and look terrible when I reconed it and everything. So I actually had to like kind of pull it up, which dragged a bunch of clear and other crap with it, so it didn't end up adhering quite as well. But nothing fried out, and with a little bit of careful tweezering, we should be all set. All right, now I'm going to add some Please Be Blue, not blue. You're blue. I'm going to back coat the dichro with blue. You don't want it to have a lot of blue, so I'm kind of trying to put a fairly thin layer over it. All right. Heat the whole thing up and cone it. Now we are going to spin the piece to create the vortex. Twist it, not spin it. Focus your heat on the thick spot. The thin spot will get heated no matter what. Slowly take your time. To vortex this down. All right, that's pretty good. I'm going to take off our handle and then recone. Your cone's going to be all kinds of screwed up at this stage. So it's important you do take the time to get it back to being the perfect cone, exactly the cone that you want it to be. Short, fat, smooth. And take your time here. You know, it's okay to marver this down 2, 3, 4 times. It's more important that you actually get the proper cone that you're looking for than it is how quickly it gets done. Because this is the last time you're going to be reconing. Normally, I put frit and stuff on the back side of this. I don't want to put anything that's going to detract from the dichro because the dichro is the whole point. So you want to get this cone perfectly, coned so that it'll be good in its final form, since this is the last time you're really manipulating it. All right, that's good. So you can see, nice, short, fat cone. Now I'm going to take some Raven, which is my favorite black, and we are going to completely cover up all the work that we've done so far. Start right around the rim, real thin layer, and on a 2-incher, your second layer is also going to be very thin, and that's when it gets thicker, is after the third ring. That's when you slow down and let the color lay itself on real thick. And then the next layer is even more so than that. And then, as always, give yourself a little bit of extra, whatever your back color is, make a little bit more on the back than you normally would. There we go. Okay, so now we got to melt all that in, and then we got to cone it down. Not cone it, marble it down. So we got our half marble. And then we'll do our back pattern. I think we're doing a star and moon back pattern on this one. You really got to spend your time getting this hot. When you get to the size like this, where it's 2-inch marbles and above, it's just a lot of glass. It's just a giant chunk of glass. So it takes a long time for things to occur, which is also why you kind of want to build up your heat base and then leave it and not let things cool down all the way. I say as I walk away and let my piece cool down. Okay, that's my star mix. I forgot to get it ready ahead of time. Get it nice and hot, and then we're going to go ahead and roll it in the star mix. I want it to be not a ton and super random, which I think has been achieved. Now we're going to melt those stars in, and then we'll make the moon. Ooh, that's hot. Not using that. All right. So 2-inch marbles make everything on your bench hot. So like my tweezers are super hot, all my glass is hot, everything gets hot. That's why I generally am going to always try to do those as like the last project of the day. All right, we're going to place our moon. Dot down. Melt it in, and also re-center my marble that has gotten super wonky. So there's going to be pictures of all of the products that I have done today up on my Facebook at Vulcan Glass Art Studio, and then also on my Instagram at Vulcan Glass Art. So I know you can't really see how these products truly look in the webcam, and while they're still sitting at 1,000 degrees. So check out one of those two spots, and you can get some better photos of these products after I've finished. So now we have laid down our black. We've laid down our moon color. Now we're going to lay down the color that turns it into a crescent, which is black. But we're going to make it a crescent. That was the point. And then melt that in. You don't want to smush that second dot at all. I did that actually on my last crescent moon project, and it screws up your moon a little bit. So really take the time to actually melt that last dot in, and not just kind of force it to adhere to everything using the marble molds. All right. Now for the part that I've been dreading, the lens. Let this cool for a second, and then we're going to add a handle to the bottom and then spend 12 years pushing this lens in. So just like all the others, the first thing we have to do is make sure that this thin piece of clear will go push itself into the marble and not kind of fold over on the marble. So we're going to spend some time right at the base where the thin meets the thick, and go ahead and make sure that gets, I mean, plenty of heat, like enough heat that it will now do what I want it to do without having to stress about it. All right, and away we go. So this is just kind of rocking it back and forth in the flame, making sure that the rod that I'm gathering into my marble, as well as the remaining clear on the marble itself, are all nice and hot, and then it will kind of just push itself together real smoothly. And I want, you want to do at least 50% of the marble in clear, so you're getting a 50% lens. I'm actually going to be shooting for a little bit more than that. Partially because I want this marble to be a little bit larger, but also because I want that vortex to show up and be really pretty. I mean, make sure it's super magnified, has that awesome effect where it looks like it goes much deeper than the marble is wide, all that good stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Normally for 2-inch marbles, I use a larger rod, diameter rod of clear. So I'll use like a 14 millimeter or a 16 millimeter wide rod. This is a 12.5. I'm not doing that mostly because I don't have any, and I don't want to buy it just for this particular project. I will be getting some more in the future to make these a little bit easier. But 2-inch marbles a little bit better when you have a thicker rod to gather from. It takes longer for it to heat, but each millimeter that you are adding in distance is much more because of the width of the piece or of the handle that you're working with. I've got like a nerve issue going on in my left hand that's causing my pinky to go numb. So I'm kind of having to do all kinds of weird stuff to make sure that I get the rest of this done. All right, I think that's enough clear. Mostly because my handle's running out. Let that cool for just a second, and then tap off the left-hand handle. Whew. All right, so now we just got to get this all melted in and turned into an actual marble. So they're pretty heavy when they get to this size, especially because you're on the end of a rod and you're rotating the whole time. So a lot of this hand switching that I'm doing is just to rest one hand for a minute while maintaining my piece in the heat so that it does not lose its heat base. Every time you can see how now it kind of mushrooms where it's like this and then it pops. Every time you put it through the marble mold and it does that, you have to then focus your heat on that bottom half and make sure that that swoop becomes a nice, smooth looking thing. Otherwise, you risk folding the glass over itself. Large marbles are fun, but very, very hot. One more time, I think. Maybe two, but probably one. And we'll be all set. All right, that pretty much got it. So now we're just going to heat the whole thing up and let it melt in. There's a bunch of cold marks and creases and stuff. I want to get rid of those. Then we'll run it through the mold one more time, and then we will start the long process of getting it off the handle, making sure it's perfectly straight, and then getting it into the kiln. All right. So now we're going to add a handle to the bottom. Make sure there's no color attached to that handle so I don't accidentally deposit color. And I want to make sure that this cold seal is indeed very cold. That way it won't leave a bunch of clear behind. Got to give this a second to cool down though. And then we melt this off. This is the first moment you really get to see if your vortex that you made looks like a vortex, if it looks cool, or if you completely screwed the pooch. Yeah, we did good. Looks good. All right. These are hot. Pinch off this bleb. Make sure that melts in completely. Let that cool for a second. Oh, that diaper was kind of purple. Well, that's cool. Now we'll change the axis. wasn't quite perfect. So when I ran it through the first time, I got all kinds of weird little lips and ridges as glass was trying to shift around to get better into a marbled shape. So we had to make sure that we got rid of all that nonsense. That's all gone. And now we're going to do our final cold seal to take the piece off the handle completely. So this time I want to make sure this cools like a lot because this last cold seal is going to be really, really weak. In order to make it really weak and pop off nice and easily, I want to make sure that the piece itself is nice and cold. Otherwise, your cold seal may adhere a little bit more than you wanted it to. So we'll get it ready. So now we just got to get rid of that spot on the very bottom from the last handle. Getting these things to be like actually completely 100% marbles is very difficult. It takes a long time because everything you do to shape one side screws up the other. So you have to take your time and kind of go back and forth between this side and this side and this side and this side to get it to all work out. All right. Looks like we have a marble. Straight, tried, and true. So I'm going to let it cool for a second. Spot back here, it seems like there's some weirdness happening with the color. I'm just going to melt that in. Yeah, that's all it took. So, I don't know if you can see it. So not much. Like I said, seriously, check out the pictures that I post up on my Facebook and my Instagram. You will see it's really, 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 really good marble. You'll like it. So, all right, cut that off. Find my little scar. Get rid of that. That was a good cold seal, so it didn't leave a bunch behind, didn't take anything with it. Let that cool for a second. And you've got your 2-inch vortex marble. Toss in the kiln. Okay, so now we're just going to take got dichro dust all over the place. We're going to go ahead and take this off the tube, and then we will call it a day. Melt that off. Go ahead and get this spot nice and hot, and then we're going to actually tweeze off the glass right up to the end of the mouthpiece. Now we make sure we have to try to make sure we pull right out of the center. You want to make sure your mouthpiece is super centered. It's one of those things that will absolutely be noticed if it's a little off. It may not affect the function of the piece, but it'll certainly affect the sale of the piece. So centered, super centered. Once that's opened up, get it nice and hot, and I don't want to increase the size so much as I just want to make it nice and circular looking. Pop, like that. And you can see we have our little turtle hammer. Okay, so that is it for today's stream. Thank you everybody who stuck around and watched, even if it was for 5 minutes. You're still awesome. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I will be going live twice a week. I am going to be changing my Friday stream to Thursday night at 4 to 7, just because my weekends are kind of clogged anyway, so that'll be a little bit easier. If you want to see pictures of these photos, check them out on Vulcan Glass Art Studio on Facebook, at Vulcan Glass Art on Instagram. And some of the products, including that 2-inch marble, are going to start showing up in Amder Production virtual art shows in Chicagoland. So if you guys get the chance, be sure to check that out. There's going to be my art and a whole lot of other cool art there. And then if you want to support the channel further, you can check us out on Patreon at Vulcan Glass TV. And if you become one of our patrons, we'll make you something really cool online, live, so you get to see it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. You have a great night.